I'm Aaron.
I'm Scott.
You're listening to the Racer to Racer podcast presented by Race 92. This is one of our special edition Week of Indy podcasts. Our guest today is Bruno Junqueira.
Yeah, and what a great interview, right? Great racer, driven guy, competitive. Guy had a really great career, and he shared some things with us. So it was a good interview. I really enjoyed talking to Bruno. Good guy, man.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, he won 8 races in CHAMPCAR, so great CHAMPCAR career. He finished runner-up in the championship, I think, 3 years in a row. He got to drive for, some of the biggest teams in racing. He drove for, obviously, Chip Ganassi Racing, Newman Haas Racing, talks a little bit about, Paul Newman and what that was like. And then, later in Indy, he was a victim of some of the, business moves in Indy that kind of happens that some people may not realize of, having to be replaced by other drivers, due to sponsorships and, different things like that.
Yeah, and it was really good to see him not bitter at that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely not.
He actually was very complimentary to the people, and and then he's still racing. I knew he'd run sports cars. I didn't know he was still running sports cars. Of course, COVID stopped that because of where the owners live. Right. They can't get into the States, but he sells real estate now. So if anybody needs to buy real estate in Florida, look him up.
Yep.
And no, it was a great interview. Really personable guy, and you can just tell he's you can just kind of see that fire, especially when he talks about racing. You can just kind of see it when he talks.
Yep, and before recording this, me and Scott were talking that he's somebody that he could jump in a race car now, and he'd be very competitive still. I mean, you can tell he's still in great shape, and he still has that fire. And he was talking about he still wants to race Le Mans.
Yeah, and I sure hope he gets that opportunity.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I'm sure he will. I mean, he's got great talent.
Oh,
so I'm sure he'll end up running Le Mans. Just don't know when. But hopefully for him, it'll be soon. It'll be many times.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So without any further ado, we'll jump right into the Bruno Junqueira interview. Our guest today won 8 races in CHAMPCAR. He started in 6 Indy 500s and won the pole for the 2002 Indy 500. We are joined by Bruno Junqueira. Hey, Bruno, how are you doing?
I'm good, and you?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for being a part of this.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Always good to talk about racing.
Yeah, I bet. All right, so obviously you had a very long successful career. Obviously, you went into CHAMPCAR and IndyCars. Talk a little bit about when and how did you first get interested in racing?
I always loved racing. I'm from Brazil. When I was 7 years old, I started racing bicycles, BMX in Brazil. So I always liked the competition. And when I turned 10 years old, my dad bought me a go-kart. And I started racing go-karts and never stopped since then.
Awesome. So when you first started racing, like what was your initial goal? Like what was your dream with racing?
My dream was always to race in Formula One. That's like Formula One was very popular in Brazil when I started racing. When I was around 15, IndyCar started to be very popular because we had Emerson Fittipaldi doing very well. He won the 500, the championship, and many other races. So IndyCar started to be very popular as well. But I went to Europe with my goal to race in Formula One. I won the Formula 3000 championship. That's a series just before Formula One. That's the same as Indy Lights. And I won. I was the Williams test driver for a couple of years. That when Williams was a very good team, I almost ended up racing and ended up not getting a seat. So I came to US to race for Chip Ganassi Racing, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm here in US for the last 20 years.
What's it like when you first get a chance to, you start racing karts, and what was it like when you first got that first taste of victory? I mean, was it something you just really took to immediately? Is it something that, the success came a little later?
I mean, for sure, the success came very late in my career when I was around 20 that I started to win big series. When I was winning small go-kart races in my city, it was success, but I always love speed. I love competition. Even if I'm winning a local race, for me it was big. I like the competition to beat the guy next door, the other drivers. So for me, it doesn't matter what I'm racing. I like to compete.
Oh, I definitely consider success at your local track a success. I mean, you can't help who shows up to race against you, right? I mean,
yes,
you're beating the guys who are showing up, and I consider that as successful. I mean, that's where you're at, so you're as successful as you can be at that moment.
exactly. Yeah.
Man, I just remember that Ayrton Senna documentary. There was a part in there where they asked Ayrton what he enjoyed racing the most, and he mentioned just some random guy that he used to race at a go-kart track. He said that was the most fun he ever had racing. And I think a lot of people would assume like, oh, it's like for you, Bruno, racing the Indy 500 or, racing in kart. But, I think the answers probably would surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, it was. I remember the story when I was growing up in go-karts. I remember he had like a big rival racing go-karts. But for me, it was, not the same. I had like, what's happening is a lot of my go-kart drivers, like Tony Canaan and Hélio Castro Neves, that I race against them, I end up racing and Cristiano da Mata as well. So I end up racing them against them in IndyCars. And so was actually good because in go-karts I was younger, I was maybe behind them a little bit, but then in IndyCars we had like a good shot. I beat them, they beat me. It was like more like a equal playing field.
Right.
So when you
go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, so when you moved into Formula 3000, who were so was it a lot of like the same rivals from karting that kind of moved into Formula 3000 with you? So was it like Kanaan and guys like that?
No, because Canaan and Hélio and Cristiano, they try Formula One out. They went to the European path, and some reason the things didn't work as well, and they came to US much earlier than me. I went there and stayed until I was test driving Formula One. Like when I raced in Formula 3000, my big competition was the F3 champions of every country. I was the South American Formula 3 champion, and I raced against the Italian, the French, the English champion, or some Asian countries. My biggest competition that year was a French driver that was actually British champion, Nicolas Minassian, and then Mark Webber and Fernando Alonso. Those are the top three guys on the championship. The year before was Montoya and Nick Heidfeld that ended up racing Formula One. So I was like, the good thing about the Formula 3000 that they call Formula 2 now, they get the best drivers from all over the world that race Formula 3 or similar categories and put everybody on the same car. And it's mano a mano, it's like race against each other on the same car, same engine, same tires, on the Formula 1 tracks Sunday morning. So I love that series because of that.
When you became a test driver, do you feel like, as you're going into it, do you feel like, man, this is the road that's going to get me that ride? Or do you kind of know going into it, like, hey, I may get the ride, I may not? Maybe kind of what's that feeling when then they give you that call and you're their test driver?
For me, it was like a strange thing that happened because I became a test driver and Zanardi was one of the drivers. And then when they fired Zanardi, I thought I would maybe get a ride. And they test me against Jenson Button, and finally Jenson Button ended up getting the ride. So it was like an odd situation, but I felt good. I mean, I was happy that I had the chance to drive a Formula One car for many, many times, and at the time at one of the top teams,
Right.
So I was very, very close, but didn't happen. But I think I came to US and I had a great career. I drove for very good teams.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Won races, won pole positions, fight for the championship. So it was fun as well.
So as a Formula One test driver, how many days do you spend in the car?
That year I spent 32 days on the car because at that time in 2000 you could test a lot. Nowadays it's very different, but I helped to test the car, develop the car in the year, and towards half of the year I helped to develop the engine for the 2001 year.
So really, when you're a Formula One test driver, and I don't really know how the Formula One test driver stuff works now. I don't know if they're in the car as much. But so mainly you probably just do like a lot of promo and PR stuff for the team, right? And
Yes,
then
some of like half of the time I was doing not 1/3 of the time I was doing PR, maybe another little less than a third I was doing straight line testing, and half of the time I was actually testing the car on circuits. At the time, I used to have 16 races, and it was allowed to do a lot of testing. Now the testing are very limited because they have 21 races in the calendar.
right, who were the main drivers those years with Williams? I think Zanardi was one, right?
Yes, Zanardi was the driver in '99 and Ralf Schumacher, and then in 2000 was Jason Button and Ralf Schumacher.
Oh.
So you're doing the test driving, and then you said Justin gets a job. At that point, were you thinking to yourself, man, this isn't going to work out? You know, I want to be in the car. I want to be on there on race day. At what point, how do you make the decision, hey, this isn't working out, I'm going to go to the States?
I was doing the test drive in 2000 and racing Formula 3000. So I won the championship. Williams had 2 drivers signed for 2001. So I had no chance to drive for them. I started to look smaller teams. And after you drive a really good car, you're not as keen as to go to smaller teams, but they still look. And then you win the championship. So I was on the top of the world. I said, you know what? I think Ganassi was a top IndyCar team. I think was a better and safer choice for me. And, you know, like Fernando Alonso that finished 4th in the championship, he went to a smaller Formula 1 team and ended up going up to the teams, you know. I didn't want to take the risk to go to a really small team and then race 1 year in Formula 1 and had no chance, you know, because you never know. In Formula 1, sometimes you get a small team that year the car is good, you can do well. And if the year that you go there, the car is not good, you can be the best driver in the world, that there is not much you can do.
Right. Yeah. And I have to agree. I mean, if I'm sitting there the same as you, that's a big bet to say, boy, I'm going to take a chance here, but I can go here and I know that this is a proven winning team. Yeah, that'd be tough. Yeah, I can see what you're talking about. So you get to the States, you start driving for Chip, and you guys had success pretty quick, right?
I mean, I came to the States, and I think at that time IndyCar was very, very strong. I would say that even looking at the budgets and everything, Ganassi or other IndyCar teams, they had bigger budgets than the small Formula 1 team. And IndyCar at the time was very strong. With 4 engine manufacturers, we had Honda, Toyota, Mercedes, and Ford. We had 2 chassis. So it was a strong series. So it made a lot of sense to come here. I came to Ganassi. I was on the pole in Nazareth in my 3rd ever race. My 4th race for Ganassi was the 500. I was the fastest rookie and ended up finished 5th. And then I won a race later in the year. So I think it was a decent year. Not as much as people expected, because they thought, because Montoya had a great success in the first year. But I think that year, the car, they had the Toyota Lola, so it was a new package for them. Wasn't as good as the Honda Reina that they were already dialed in. So we improved the car, and in 2002, the following year, I won many races and finished 2nd in the championship. So I was like, I had 1 year to learn as well, to learn the tracks, learn the culture, the regulation of how to race in the US as well.
So 2001. So was 2001 your first time ever on an oval?
Yes, it was and it's incredible. My first time ever in an oval, I was on the pole in Nazareth, and I finished 7th. So I had the speed, I didn't have the knowledge to race. So that's why Although I was the fastest driver on that weekend, I ended up finished 7th.
Right. So racing Indy, I've always heard people say that Indy is more like more like a road course than actually an oval. Would you say that's kind of true? Really?
Yes. It's 50-50. It's still an oval,
right?
But I think it's 4 corners and there is not much banking. You have to time it perfect. It's very different than racing like in Texas or Fontana or some like high banking or medium banking tracks. It's very different. I love it. I love the 500.
When you're over in Europe and running and you see the guys running the ovals, as a driver who's driving very technical, you're driving a very technical race car, you're driving very technical racetracks, and you see the ovals, what is your impression of the ovals before you get to run one?
I was watching IndyCars because number one, I'm a big race fan. At that time, IndyCar was very popular. Eurosport to show all the races live. So it was a really good thing to do on Sunday night because it was in the end of the day in England, where I used to live. So I had a lot of fun watching, and I really want to try because I love fast corners and ovals about going fast. Really high speed on the corners. So I always had that will. And what I really love about IndyCars, that we have all the 3 disciplines. We have ovals, we have street courses, and we have road courses. So somebody to do well in this series, the driver and the team, they need to be really good in all the 3 disciplines. And what is nice that some guys are really good oval drivers, or they have good oval cars. They show up there, they win the pole, they win the race, and when they go to the road course or street course, they don't do as well. And some others are the opposite. So this blend and this mixture that makes, in my opinion, IndyCar is very exciting. So you never know who's gonna win. There is no prediction like in Formula One. You have like 2 or 3 guys with chances to win. IndyCars, I think this year we had like 4 races, four or five different winners. So that mixture is very nice and it makes it very challenging for the drivers and the team to succeed in the series. To do well, you need to be good on all the 3 disciplines.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard. It's and like you said, like I think some people look at a natural road course and then they look at a street course and think they're similar, and they're not. They're completely different.
Oh yes.
I mean, you're driving in a tunnel a lot. On a street course, it's you got the walls and it's just a total different thing. When you ran the first track, was there any of these tracks? And I know some people say, well, Indy can be kind of intimidating, but man, I would think Texas, especially at that time, I would think Texas would be pretty intimidating the first few times.
Yeah. In my first IndyCar race in 2001, in my first year, you were going to race in Texas. It was going to be the first time CHAMPCAR was going to race in Texas.
Okay.
And a couple of drivers passed out and crashed in practicing. So they canceled the race. I don't know
that was your first. So that was your rookie year. I didn't realize that.
That was my rookie year. Yes.
Is that the year they were talking about on rapid response, where something with the G forces was affecting people?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
So what was your first time running Texas in?
2001.
The racer.
2008. Because I stayed in CHAMPCARs and we never come back to Texas. So in 2008, when they merged, I raced in Texas.
You had what I would consider a lot of great success, especially when you stayed in CHAMPCAR and you were running CHAMPCAR. And I think you won 8 races, 7 races, 8 races in CHAMPCAR. And, kind of take us through, like, when you come to that point, I think you ran second to points, 3 times?
Yes.
And you were leading the points when you unfortunately got hurt at Indy.
Yes.
What's that feeling like where all of a sudden now you come to the States and you've established yourself, and now you're running up there and your performance is meeting your expectations?
I mean, I came to US. I'm being always driven to do well,
Right.
and I had the first year that was difficult. The second year was great. I finished second in the championship, won a few races, pole positions, always fighting on the top three, top five. And then on the following year, my goal was to win the championship, and I finished second. So I say I lost the championship, so it was really hard for me to solo. And then the following year again, 3 times in a row, and 3 times with a different winner of the championship. So it was kind of difficult for me. I was very competitive, but then I put a lot of effort for 2005. I think I was in great shape, but unfortunately, leading the championship, I had an accident. I broke my back, and I stayed a year out. But I learned some things that really teach me a lot in my life. I think the accident teach me a lot because life is not about winning. You have to work very hard to win, but it's not just about it. Sometimes you cannot get everything that you want. I was very driven, and sometimes I got very frustrated when I didn't win. So I learned to be a better person after my accident. But in another hand, when I was young, teenager, racing through the ranks, I needed to have that winning attitude because I never had a wealthy family that could pay me to race. I always needed to win to get sponsorships, to get rides for the following year. So I think it's a balance. I learn with the time and age and everything to balance both.
I think that's a huge misconception for a lot of people in America. They see the drivers from other countries come over, and I think in their minds, they don't see an American driver getting a shot. They don't always take into account how hard you guys have worked over there to get your sponsors.
Yes.
To race in whatever series you're running. And that's something I try to tell people. I was like, everybody thinks these guys come over and they're just wealthy and, dripping with cash, and that's just not it. There's a lot of different ways to put money packages together and get sponsors. And I think, I wouldn't say that you work harder at it. I think that guys, a lot of the drivers from other countries they figure out how to get here, right? They figure out how to put the deal together to get here. And I think that's something that sometimes that is lost on some people. They just don't quite understand how hard it really is.
Yeah, I think the Brazilians had a great tradition on the 90s and 2000s to have great drivers in both Formula One and IndyCar. And I think the biggest secret that to have, for sure, have really strong go-karting, and that makes good drivers. But is the will and the grit to succeed. When you are a teenager and you leave your country to live by yourself in Europe or in the United States, you want to work 100%, give you 100% to succeed. You don't want to go back to your country without succeed. So this grit, this push, 24/7, working hard to succeed, I think was the biggest secret, especially for me and some of my friends, fellow Brazilians that succeed in Europe or in the US.
Yeah, I said to one of, we've interviewed a couple of Brazilians on the show, and I said to one of them, I said, one thing it seems like about, especially Brazil, if you can win in other countries and represent Brazil well, I mean, you're treated. I mean, people really get behind you.
Yeah.
And that I always think that's very impressive. Because sometimes like the United States can be a little indifferent at times when Americans are doing well, doing things. And I always think that's always very impressive when, and I'm not just saying it's exclusive to Brazil, but it's something I definitely see in the Brazilians, just how much the country just gets behind you.
Yeah, it is. I think all the small Latin American countries as well. I've been in the US for 20 years, and I love, and I'm American as well. My kids are born here. What's happened? American, there is a really good sports culture. So if you're a good athlete, you can get high school, you can get university, you can get. So I think it's the number one country or sports country in the world for at least half of the sports. When you go to Olympics, you get the most gold medals and everything. But that, on the racing side, that you love it, makes it a little bit harder because, if you are the best American race car driver, okay, that's good, but you have another 50 sports that the United States is number one as well. And in the case of Brazil, usually you always had a really good soccer team, a really good race car driver, and one or two other sports that were good. Sailing, Brazil always been good in sailing. Now the jiu-jitsu, MMA, and that's it. At some point there was a really good tennis player, but it was just one. And there is always just one of a kind that those got good in one sport and then disappear. But like the sports that Brazil have tradition is being number one soccer, number two racing, maybe number three sailing, and that's it. So that's what people gets behind is the soccer and racing.
No, that makes sense. I hadn't really thought of it like that because in the States, we, like you said, there's just an abundance, right? There's just so much of so many things that the people are just kind of spread out to what they like or their allegiance. Yes. Every once in a while, you'll find an athlete, say like Michael Jordan or LeBron James or somebody or Kobe Bryant that, large amounts of people gravitate to. But so often it's, you have some fans here, some fans there. And no, that makes sense. I understand that now.
So talk a little bit about, what was your first year at Indy like? Obviously, you say you always watched the 500, and I'm sure you had, some kind of vision of what it would be like. Did it kind of meet your expectations? Obviously, you were very successful your first year at Indy, finishing 5th. And I'm guessing you would have got Rookie of the Year, but that 2001 was when Elio, so he obviously got that. But what was it like your first year in Indy?
Was an incredible experience. I did a test with Ganassi. Me and my teammate Nicola Minassian, we were both rookies. We didn't have much over experience, but I think I did well. But Ganassi then decided that he was going to hire Tony Stewart and Jimmy Vasser to race because they were more experienced, was a safer bet. So they went on qualify day, they qualified the car, and I was going back home. I used to live in Indianapolis, and then Mike Hall called me, "Hey Bruno, come back here to the track. Ganassi wants you to go and qualify tomorrow on bump day." So I remember I was like arriving home, you turn, go back, do a seat feet, and then next day I jump on the car, and I always had this really good relationship with Indy. Like I get up to speed very fast, and I did a few laps in the morning, and I went to qualify, and I qualified the fastest on that day, faster than Mike Andretti and faster than a lot of other good drivers, and actually faster than Jimmy Vasser and Tony Stewart, and I was the fastest rookie, faster than Helio and everybody. I think I was qualified to be good, to be P5 in 5th place. But then I started like 26 or something like that, or 23rd. So on the start was one of the most incredible things in my career. I was between Mike Andretti and I was a junior. I was in the middle. And in Indianapolis, when the car is good, you can take it flat all the way around, or maybe you lift. You never brake. And I remember I came to turn 1 on the start with all that vibration and everything. I had to brake and downshift. It was like a very incredible experience, especially the first 2 or 3 laps with all the cars in front. Because even if you practice 1 or 2 cars in front, not with 26 cars in front. And slowly I start to go to the field, and I think it was one of my greatest race. I had no experience and ended up finish 5th. I was running 4th. behind Michael. Michael finished third, and my M plate fell off, and then Jimmy ended up passing me like for a few laps, and I finished fifth. So for me it was a great experience. I was like up there, like next to Jimmy Vassi, Tony Stewart, Michael Andretti, like big idols for me, like racing against those guys. And Helio, that was my race friend since we were like 10 and 11 years old racing cars, ended up winning the race. The only thing that was not fair that he won Rookie of the Year. I know that was his first year, but he's been racing IndyCars and ovals for many years. Right. I was actually the real rookie.
Yeah.
On my second ever oval race in my life, I raced Nazaré on the weekend before, and then Indy. I didn't know what to do, but whatever. Helio won the race and the Rookie of the Year, but I had a great experience and great memories.
What was that like? We've talked to a couple of drivers that started in the back, and they were talking about their experience, like with all the, like you said, you just drafted behind a couple of cars, and it's not that big a deal. Now you got these cars in front of you. Now you got all the fumes, all from the fuel and everything, and you got guys kind of trying to find a way to fit in. I mean, you're so focused? I'm sure not at the time, but looking back, is it pretty hair raising? Pretty nervous time?
Oh, yes. I remember that time was the most amazing thing I ever did in my life. I remember I spoke with my dad. Wow, that start or that first 2 laps, I couldn't believe how much the car would shake, how much the both thin and narrow thing from the draft of the cars, like, was completely... I was imagining the race before I go, how will be the laps, how will be the pit stop, all those things that go through my head. But that I could never imagine. So it was like a unique experience.
And you never had to start. Did you ever have to start that far back again?
Yes. There was a year that it was the same. That I didn't have a ride, and they called me in bump day, and I qualified the fastest of bump day, and I don't remember the position, but like 26.
2000. I think it was it 2010 with fast?
Yeah, 2010 with fast, yes. Qualified 20 something, was the same.
So obviously
you had the memory from before, so
yeah.
You didn't have to. It wasn't a big surprise then, right?
No, it was much easier. 10 years later, I had a big Indy experience. It was easy.
Right.
So obviously you've started near the back of the pack, and then obviously in 2002 you got the pole. What do you really think is the big difference in the approach when you're starting farther in the back versus starting in the front?
Much easier starting in the front.
Right.
And then I started fourth. I mean, starting the pole was great. I had a lot of confidence. I had a really good car, and I led the race until the engine started to have a problem, and then my engine blow out. I think I had a car to win the race. Was a shame of the engine thing. But the only issue that I had is like the year before, the guy I think Scott Goodyear, he crashed. He started on the pole and crashed in turn 1. So all the reporters, Bruno, you're not going to do like Scott Goodyear, And I was like, I need to be very careful in turn 1, but then when you go there, you just go and drive. And it was perfect. I did turn 1 and led the race until the engine started having problems, and then a few laps later blew up.
Or it could have been like 1992 and spinning before the race even started.
Yeah. No. I mean, you always have to pay attention, but
right.
Yeah, that would look too bad. Ganassi would scream too much, so I'll make sure I had a good warm-up lap and good turn 1 and first few laps.
You mentioned Mike Hull, and Mike. I don't know Mike. Mike's been around forever, but Mike seems like a really cool guy. How cool is Mike to deal with?
Oh, he's incredible. He's calm but very, very knowledgeable about racing. He's one of the best people in racing that I ever worked with, for sure. And I mean, I think Ganassi is a winner, and a part of being a winner is to have a solid guy like Mike Hull behind him. That guy, Mike Hull, is incredible. He does a really good work for the team.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, Mike gets on social media every once in a while and share some little insides and that. But he's been around for so long, and he's just one of the great guys behind the scenes of the sport.
Yes. And people think that when a driver wins the race, whatever, it's not just a driver. There's a big team behind, And I think the team is very important. And the consistency that he has with the team is incredible. I mean, every year Ganassi is always up there. On the last 20 years, I've been watching, 25 years, even before me, they always been very consistent.
Yeah, then of course, you were a teammate with Dixon for a brief period, right?
2002. Yes, when I finished second in the championship.
And they've had such a long and great relationship.
Yes.
And I have to believe that Mike's been such a steadying person there that it probably really helps that, because you can't be somewhere that long and not have some bumps in the road.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think they're gonna still have a few years left. Dixon is incredible. He's really good in all the three disciplines. That's why he's winning so much.
When you watch a Scott Dixon, what do you like? What I told Aaron one day, we were just talking about the same thing, how good he is. And what I told Aaron is, I said, the thing about Scott Dixon is Scott Dixon will know he's on his decline years before somebody like myself would know it. Like, he's that good, right? I mean, he knows when, where he's fallen off a little here, if he's fallen off, what he has to work on, that sort of thing. When you watch somebody like Scott Dixon, what do you? I mean, I guess this is maybe too general of a question, but what do you see? I mean, is it just that drive and that his driven to success and perfection, or I mean, kind of what do you see when you see somebody at his level?
I think he has so much experience and so much confidence on him. That's so much belief and no pressure. Because everything combined make him a very, very winnable driver. I think when you win, you start to have more confidence, and then you can win. He has nothing to prove, so everything falls on his side. That makes it much easier.
Yeah, no, that makes absolute sense.
And he's good in ovals, road courses, and street courses, and saving fuel, and everything else.
Well, like we had another guest on here, and we were talking about Dixon a little bit, and he said the thing about Scott is that you would think somewhere like Texas, where you're a little older driver, you're not gonna, maybe extend yourself quite at Texas, and like he said, he's the oldest driver with the biggest balls, and he's not going to back off or anything.
The difference is like you're going to extend yourself on the last 20 laps. Right. Sometimes the younger drivers extend themselves on the first 20 laps and end up crashing. So He knows the time and when takes the gamble. So that's why he's very consistent. That's in the championship run. That's what makes difference.
Sure.
Sometimes you have kids that are very fast, maybe faster than him. Now more balls or whatever, take more risks. But throughout the championship is very difficult. That's why in the end of the championship, if you still look, there is always the experienced drivers. We have some really fast drivers that can do 2-3 races good and then one bad one. Scott and Joseph Newgarden, all those other guys as well, consistency. And then in the end of the year, who are the top 3 in the championship? Always the same.
Right. I mean, Scott wasn't great at Indy this past weekend. Run 10th.
Right.
Or 9th. Run 9th or 10th. I forget which. They weren't even, they hadn't been in the hunt really all weekend. But guess who's in the top 10 when it's all over,
And guess who's leading the championship?
Right. Absolutely. When you mentioned that when you unfortunately got hurt at Indy, you mentioned that it taught you a lot. Were you, because like you said, you had to sit out a year. Was it more a lot in just general life lessons, or was it did it make you reflect maybe on your approach to the sport?
No, general life lessons. Yeah. My approach is still the same. Maybe when I finished second, I was not mad. I was happy. That's maybe
Right.
the different on the approach in the sports, you know?
Well, when it's over, right? I mean,
Yes.
So when you have a bad accident like that, I mean, do you ever like second guess like if you want to continue racing, or is it just something that is just in your blood and it just kind of gives you more desire to get back and to start winning again?
It was in my blood. I never had a second thought. The first thought after that, when are you going to be able to race again?
Right.
And then I came back to Indianapolis in 2008. Yes, 2008. And in the third lap, I was already flat all the way around. So no, like nothing happened. You know, otherwise, if you start second guessing, it's better to stop.
well, you look at Hinchcliffe's crash where he was hurt and he come back the next year, he sat on the pole. Or you look at Bourdais, that horrific crash he had, come back and he's been fast at Indy, since then.
Yeah.
Like you said, I think you just have a way of compartmentalizing that, maybe learning from it and just moving on.
Yes, I think in the end of the day, some people, the guy after the crash got slower. Maybe there is a point. It's not because I think it's not because of the crash. In my case, sometimes is the grit, the will, or whatever, that thing of never losing. Maybe in the end of the day, that gives you edge, But when you see about consistency, maybe I could have got more consistent, not being as aggressive as I was before. So there is always a balance, and unless you have like a really bad concussion or something like that some drivers could maybe make it lower. But I think in general, it's just learning through experience of the big crash or something like that. You get smarter. And in the end of the day, if it's 5 laps, you need to take the risk. You take the risk the same way as before. I'm sure that me, Hinchcliffe, or Bourdais are not afraid of anything. It's not about afraid. It's just being smarter as well.
Right.
It seems like now there's a lot of guys. Well, I'm thinking of like Romain Grosjean. I think he originally was going to run the whole season, and since he had his bad accident where he caught on fire, that kind of persuaded him against running Indy. So I think it's kind of interesting how it's different for some people, and it seems like now when people get scared, they just don't run Indy. And I know like Chilton was one originally that said he didn't want to run Indy anymore, but I think he's still running Indy this year.
I agree. I think some drivers that came from Europe or that maybe have like I'm not going to say bad things, but they are maybe wealthy already or married or, with kids. And
right.
They don't want to take the risk. That's maybe the explanation, because we had a lot of people getting hurt in Indy in the last, always, not last 20 years, but always had, I mean, I don't know. That's maybe the only explanation, I think. But yeah, when you're young, you go for it.
Right,
when
right.
you're married and kids, and you never did it, some guys don't want to try to do it. That's the only explanation. I don't know. I'm just thinking about it. It's not, saying bad things about somebody, but maybe that's why.
Well, it is funny though that when they especially ran the road course, and then you hear Grosjean say, "Well, I might test on an oval." And then you hear Jimmy Johnson, "Man, I might test on an oval." And, as the wheels are turning, "Hey, I might want to run Indy next year." So I think that the lure of that place can get to you a little bit. It can change your plans.
Yeah, I wish Jimmy Johnson would run the 500. He would love it. And I think he would do much better.
Mm-hmm.
He will adapt much quicker in the Indy than on the road courses, street courses. It will be much better for him. I think with all his knowledge, how much smart he is, and his racecraft, I think he'll do very well in the 500.
And he's won on the
time. I'd love to see him there.
I think he'll be there next year.
Right.
That's a guess. I mean, obviously, I don't know anything, but I feel like next year, and that aero screen has changed a lot too.
Yes.
That's I mean, obviously you ran in the open cockpit. You didn't even have the little windscreen like they did like in the 70s, you
Yeah.
know? So, and I think now that they've seen how well they work, because there's been 2-3 incidences that were pretty touch and go, where the windscreen has definitely shown that it can withstand a heavy crash.
Yeah.
I think that can help change minds too.
I agree.
Unfortunately, I think when people look at what happened to Justin Wilson, I think that's hard not to overlook.
Yes. Yeah, I think the cars 7-8 years ago, they had too many pieces on the car as well, didn't help. Now the cars are more like one less small wings on the car with their screen. So for sure the cars are much safer now than it was a few years ago. I think IndyCar did a good job. My opinion, the only thing that I always tell, you can make safer cars, safer tracks, so the drivers are always gonna push more the limit. So I know that is the series. They need to do it. Makes a really safe track with soft walls, safe car, whatever. The driver is gonna push more the limit, and it's never gonna be completely safe. Not saying that's the driver's fault. That's what we have to do, But it is what it is. It's racing. Racing must be always a little bit of risk. That's the adrenaline. That's what makes us different from a regular person on everyday driving the cars on the street. You need to have a little bit of danger on the thing as well.
Well, you gotta believe in yourself. I mean,
Yes.
there's just no two ways about that. You absolutely have to believe in yourself and what you're doing and your ability.
Yes.
Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
No, no, go ahead, Scott.
No, I was just going to say, you mentioned, now this is a man that I think a lot of people are intrigued by. What was it like to be around Paul Newman?
Great. Paul Newman is a great person, but the most important, he was racing passionate. One of the persons that love racing mostly that I know in my life, and a very, very good driver. At his age, I saw him running faster than a lot of young kids. And he was very fast, very passionate of racing, and a great personality. I love him and Carl Haas. I had such a pleasure and a blast to be able to drive for them.
Yeah, that's a little unfair not to mention Carl Haas, because he too was a pretty interesting character.
Yes.
This is a man I've only seen on TV, but man, he always seemed like, I guess he and Paul shared the same passion, right? They just loved racing. I mean, that's just was all they cared about, really, in a way.
Exactly. Unbelievable. Their lives was racing, especially Carl, the team racing, and his wife Bernie. That's pretty much everything that he cares about. And Paul, I think he cares about the charity, that he's unbelievable, the work that he had done. I think for sure the person in the world that did more charity in the world by far. You can say Bill Gates, all the guys donated more money, but for sure, for the wealth that Paul Newman had and the amount of money that he donated is more than everybody. So the percentage,
Right.
So that Paul Newman did a great job, and they love racing. That's what their lives was all about.
Yeah, I know a couple of the older drivers, and that like they like they say, Paul was a racer, and that's a big, that's a pretty high compliment considering who the people are. And it's pretty amazing, really, that he had this career in acting, and he just came into racing and loved it and had that passion, and was able to hone his skills and truly make a life's career out of being a racer and a race car owner.
Yes, unbelievable. Really, really good actor. Very good on the charity and on racing. So he had like three different lives.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
So obviously in racing, business is a big part of it, and unfortunately, you were the victim of 2 different times at Indy 500 of qualifying the car and then being replaced. And I think so. The first one was 2009. Did you actually qualify the car in 2009?
Both years I qualified. 2009, Conquest had 2 cars. 1 car, they qualified the driver, and then on the bump day, they called me to try to qualify the second day, spare car. And I qualify as well for the fastest of the day. I'm the king of the bump day. I qualify like 4 times the fastest. And then I end up bumping the other car. And Eric Bachelard, the team owner, was very nice to me and said, Bruno, we have Tagliani that raced the full year. I need to have him on the car. And I understood, in the end of the day, it's a business. Eric gave me a chance to qualify. I had a lot of fun driving the car on the limit with not many practicing laps. And I showed that I could do it very well. But yes, that's easy to understand.
Was it next year with Foyt? Was it the second time with Foyt?
2011.
In 2011, I came, 2010, I came with fast and I qualified in bump day as well, the same kind of but end up racing. And the following year with AJ Foyt, but then I was not on bump day. I practiced like 4 or 5 days and I qualified on the pole day. I qualified the car. And then I think the Andretti cars, 3 of the Andretti cars didn't qualify. And Ryan Runteray had the brand new DHL sponsor that he still have until now for like 10 years. Incredible. And then they end up buying my seat from AJ Foyt. And I understood, I mean, it is what it is, it's fine. I had fun. I drove well and put on the grid.
You're speaking of characters, you got this. Did you spend a lot of time talking to Foyt?
Sorry?
I said, speaking of characters, did you spend a lot of time talking to AJ? Like when you drove
for him?
A little
bit. He's a big character, yeah. But it was fine. I think I admire him. Great driver. There's nothing else I can say. I mean, the guy won everything.
Everything. Yeah. He's definitely definitely one of a kind. That's for sure.
Yes.
And it's funny because a lot of people, when you think of Foyt, you think like, that, he's mean and he's kind of rough with the drivers. But we interviewed Marco Greco, for example, and he was saying, no, AJ, like, everyone kind of said that he was, kind of tough to deal with. But, AJ was great with me. Like, he was super nice, always helped me however he could. Did you kind of have a similar experience with AJ?
I mean, I had like 4 or 5 days on his car.
Right.
Yeah.
Even less, maybe 3, because rain, I remember I drove like 3 days or something like that. He was fine. And Larry Foyt should run the team. I think he still does. He's a super nice, super gentleman. And even when he called me about, selling the seat or whatever, I mean, both of them treat me very well, and it was great. I never ended up racing, I was just practicing and qualify, and I just put the car on the show in a decent position. So I think it was good. I have no complaints.
When was the last time you raced competitively? Are you still racing competitively today, or?
Last time I raced, actually 2019. I did a few Lamborghini Super Trofeo races. Actually, I won my first Super Trofeo, and then I did like a second and third. I did three races with a gentleman. And last year I was going to do it, 2020, and my driver is from Canada, my gentleman driver, and because of COVID, he canceled to race, and he still didn't race yet because still all the restrictions from Canadians. If they came here, they have to stay 14 days in quarantine, and he's still not racing yet. So I raced sports car full time for 7 years after IndyCars. In the last 3 or 4 years, I've been doing 3-4 races a year, or prototypes, or GTs, or Lamborghini Super Trofeo. So I've been always active, always winning races, but now is the odd thing because it's been like almost 2 years I don't race. It never happened to me before.
So when everything opens back up, when your gentleman driver is able to race, are you going to go back to racing, or?
Yeah, that's the idea. Okay. I've been talking with both Canadians and this guy from Germany as well, that he thought he was coming to race Watkins Glen, and I think it's not going to happen. But let's see. Maybe I do a few races in the end of the year. If not, I hope next year because I love it.
Oh, that's great. I mean, that's really great that you just, I mean, you're just somebody who just going to, not take any seat, but take good seats if you think you can be competitive in the cars and still going to compete.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you first went into sports cars, did you still think, man, I might be able to get back to Indy cars? Or once you got into sports cars, were you thinking, this is probably where I'm going to be at?
I think after AJ Indy 500, I never call any IndyCar teams anymore. I was racing sports car for Jaguar, I think, that year. Yes. And I was heading my career that I raced IndyCars around 35, and I think I was 34 at the time, and then start racing sports car. I think I had a great career in IndyCar, and I think I did, and everything that I wanted. I wish I would have won the championship, but didn't happen. But I won many races and many podiums and everything, so it was good.
So, I guess life outside of racing. So you're a realtor now. So how did you get into that?
Around 2009 and 10, when I had the crisis here in Miami, or the subprime crisis, I bought a few foreclosure apartments, and I used my friend that was a realtor, and I started to rent them and started doing well. By 2014, the apartments I made a good money, and I got a license for me to sell the apartment because I was working or renting and everything, and I got a license for me. I sold the apartment. We sold office building as well that I had with more partners. And then in 2015, a friend would like to buy a house. I sold it. And then the other one, another apartment. And so that's a good commission and good work. And I'm still racing sports car IMSA full time. But it's something that I started to do on the side. And I always did for myself and for some friends. And I never thought, like the COVID pandemic came and I stopped racing, and real estate now became my full-time job, and I'm doing very well. So,
well, you're definitely in the right spot for it. If you're in Florida, that's a good place for it.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. And now all the people from the north and in California as well are coming to here. So a lot of activities. I've been working full time this year. Incredible. in one way, if I had to race, I don't know if I was going to be able to. So that's funny how life goes, I mean, and I still miss race a lot. I always talk with my driver from Canada, and he miss racing. I miss Bruno. But you're working so much. Are you going to be able to race with me? I said yes. I always have time to racing. I stopped real estate for like a weekend, for like 3 or 4 days. I can do it.
So, kind of wrapping up here. So, when you look back at your career, was there one win or one pole or one race that you're kind of most proud of?
I think there are two races, three races in IndyCars. For sure, the two most special wins was the win in Motegi in 2002 in Japan. I was driving for Toyota, and never Japanese engineer had won the country, and the track was owned by Honda. So I won in a Honda track with a Toyota engine. I think that's very special, and it was my first over win. Although being on the pole many times, always close, but actually to get a over win, it was very nice. And then a second one is a race that I almost won many times, being on the pole many times, and that's Surface Paradise in 2004. I love that track. Every driver's favorite track and favorite race. So it was pretty cool. And then for sure, in Formula 3000, when I won the Monaco Grand Prix, was very special. Have the Monaco race this weekend, and winning Monaco is very, very special as well. In pole position, the best pole for sure is the 500. At the time, the pole day was 2 weeks before the race. Usually the pole position, you win the pole position and you can enjoy for 24 hours. In the 500, I could enjoy for 2 weeks. It was very cool.
Yeah, winning in Monaco. What was that like?
It was very cool. In 2000, it was incredible. We had like dinner with the Prince of Monaco and everything. Like was very nice.
Yeah, it looks amazing when you see it on TV. Just the atmosphere, and I would say probably you've raced both. So, in my opinion, the only race in the world I think that would even compared to Indy as far as tradition and prestige and that sort of thing. And you can definitely speak to that because you've ran both, you know.
Yes. I mean, I think it's very hard to compare. I think Indy is bigger crowd. I think to watch live there is nothing in the world that compares to watch Indy 500. But on the other hand, Monaco is more luxury, more prestige, whatever. I don't know, in the middle of the streets. That's a very expensive area. All those big buildings and casinos and restaurants, whatever. I don't know, the boats. I don't know. I mean, it's very unique. But yeah, I had great opportunity to race in both of them. And to be honest, I know that every year gets a little bit harder, but I had a few almost opportunities. My goal is to race the third most important, or as important, is the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I hope I can feel that dream in the future.
Yeah, I hope you get to too. You know, that's a race you watch on TV and it just looks amazing.
Yeah.
You know, and people still talk about, you know, obviously they made a movie about it just 2-3 years ago, you know, Ford and Ferrari and all that. So, it just means a lot. That's a big race.
It is.
So we have a question that we ask as we kind of wrap up our shows. And I ask, I always like to give the person we're speaking with a chance to speak about someone. It could be somebody it could be a family member. It could be somebody very well known. It could be somebody we've never heard of, but somebody that meant a lot to you in your career. Somebody that, that just really, I guess, is somebody you could kind of point to and say, man, that person there really meant a lot.
I think in my career, for sure, was my dad. We came together from a city there was not even a go-kart track. He was mid class, didn't have much money. We bought the first go-kart. It's not that they were poor, but we were able to start. But then he helped me a lot through getting sponsorships and everything. So it's like it's a team work to get where I got, you know. So for sure, he's the person that helped me most in my career.
That's great. I love hearing that.
Sorry?
I said that's great. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
Once again, Bruno, thank you so much. Really do appreciate it. Like I was saying, we've interviewed a few other Indy guys, and I tell you what, it's been a lot more fun than I thought it would be when we originally started. It's great to hear, the stories, talk to different people, really hear the personalities. So once again, we really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron. Thank you, Scott. It was a pleasure to talk about racing, I cannot go racing right now, but just to talk about it makes it exciting.
So if I know anybody moving to Florida, I'm sending them right to you to get a house.
Okay.
No, I tell you, it's been a pleasure for me to listen to your stories and talk to you. And you've had an amazing career. Some very special moments, and we appreciate you sharing those with us.
Thank you very much, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruno.
I appreciate it.